Oi guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, with much speculation over the last few days as to what exactly is going on with this OpTic Accuracy situation. There has been further information over the last couple of days that suggests indeed, to some degree, Accuracy is getting involved in trying to help Pred and Kenny become the best version of themselves going into champs. More drama on the day as well elsewhere. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, happy birthday to Priestahh, 26, I guess as of today basically. I know there was some talk of him pressing actually what he's going to do next. Of course, world champion back in the day, 2019 on that United team. He did say, probably a month or so ago, that he's looking to potentially get involved in XDefiant, the Pro League effectively, as and when that may eventually ever arrive. So we'll see if there's a future over there for Priestahh and other players. Let's talk then about this Boston team, because there was some drama going down on this one over the last couple of days. They have apparently tried to be forming this roster, this Cammy, Arcetes, Purge and Snoopy roster that they might be trying to take to the Esports World Cup, and then, you know, who knows what happens after that. Then there were rumours that, okay, maybe it's not Purge, maybe it's actually Pentagrxm instead. I don't massively think that moves the needle, let's be perfectly honest. So Methods weren't very happy about this roster, and yeah, this was the rumoured roster of 4. But as far as I understand, some things have been changing behind the scenes over the last couple of days. Like, I don't really know what's happening in Boston right now, but you know, I think after all the speculation came out about this potential team, there was talk about, well, maybe the guys that are really making the decisions over there aren't so happy with what is going on. And of course, we don't really know what the truth is behind who actually is making these decisions, because over the last few months, Dens is the general manager, has been for the last couple of years. Zed is the head coach, but how involved are they in the day-to-day decisions? We don't really know. Presumably those are the guys making the calls, but potentially not. Then there were rumors emerging that, okay, maybe it's Doug Censor Martin that's been making some of the calls over the last few months. And like, Doug came on our show a couple of months ago and kind of said how, you know, there were certain players that he wanted to see on the team, not necessarily that he'd made those decisions or anything, but, you know, the feeling was that Doug had some sort of a say, or at least his words would carry some sort of weight in terms of what the team was going to do. Now, does that make him the de facto general manager? Not necessarily, and Doug reached out to me privately and the other guys privately on the show, we talked about it yesterday, to say, look, those decisions weren't mine. Sure, he's got his perspective. That doesn't necessarily mean that that is exactly what is going to happen. So Gersh was on the show last night and says that, yeah, according to Doug, who got in touch with Gersh, he'd never put together any of these Boston rosters. The rumoured roster isn't even true. Every team that happened was the opposite of what he wanted to see. So I know there were some comments on this, like I think Ben commented on this particular clause in the sentence to kind of say, well, doesn't that like sound like he wants to be involved to some degree? But whatever. Doug says the rumoured roster ain't true, and this roster of 4 isn't actually going to be happening. But it obviously came from somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but this was a potential roster of 4. I think what might be going on here is that there's a bit of an identity crisis internally at Boston with exactly who is going to make these decisions, because I'm sure the owners, the higher-ups, can't be so happy with the state of this team over the last several years, really, at this point. Like, they were reasonably competitive when they first came in. They, you know, showed at least that they could be a force to sometimes make a Sunday, at least make it competitive. The last couple of years, though, certainly this season has been an absolute shambles, given the amount of money they spent at the start of the year to try and compete with the top 4, and they could not have been further away from the top 4 if they tried. So, you know, no Beans, of course, no Priestahh, obviously Slasher ain't coming back, that's not going to happen. We'll talk about that briefly, I think, later on today, actually. Or maybe I'll just mention it now. This was a quote that Slasher had last night in the Twitch chat during the show, and we were kind of asking Slasher, like, hey, what about Boston, right? Like, what would it take for you to come back and take the keys or whatever? And Slasher says this: hell no, I ain't coming back to play as it currently stands. I've got to be the GM, the team captain, the shadow GM, everything. So Slasher's like, look, if you want to bring me back, Boston, you've got to give me the full selection of keys here to choose everything that I want to choose. Otherwise, there's no way it's going to happen, right? So I think from the Boston side, you got to wonder if the owners are looking at their structure and saying, okay, Den, Zed, Doug, like whatever's going on here, like something has got to give, because I don't know, this roster got rumoured or leaked or whatever, whether it's true or not, the overwhelming reaction has been like, what are you playing at if you're actually trying to win? And I'm sure there are interesting conversations being had right about now internally. The other thing that I wanted to mention though, so Doug came in the chat here when Kaysan, so we know FaZe Kaysan, he's got into the occasional drama over the last few months for various reasons, but anyway, Kaysan kind of responded to what we were talking about, what Doug had to say before he actually came in the chat himself, and Kaysan says, like, something called only wanting views, said it before, we'll say it again. Ben says, agreed, Kaysan. So, you know, that's what initially happened. And then Doug appears and says, so fake, bro. Look who's talking. Kaysan goes, oh, he's here for more views. So, okay, effectively the idea was that Doug was saying this type of stuff to, like, or just talking about the fact that he's not actually the GM to rile up some views and some talking points and whatever. And obviously they were having a back and forth, and, you know, Doug's like, hey, look, Kaysan, you can't be one to talk about trying to do stuff for views. And then they keep going back and forth. Doug calls him fake, and, you know, Doug says, actually, I just pulled up and I see you talking about me. You can hit me up. You've got my number. And says, you know, just like how I mentioned to all the people in here as well, privately, you don't even know me. Unless you know me, don't talk about me. And actually, even Slasher was here saying, oh, come on, guys, you know, keep it in-house type thing. Like, you know, crashing out on the timeline or whatever, crashing out here in the Twitch chat. And no, look, we got Doug on the show before a couple of months ago. We decided that we were just going to focus on what we were going to try and talk about yesterday, champs predictions, roster ready, this type of stuff, then, you know, have some more drama. But anyway, it happened in the chat regardless. And yeah, so Doug and Kaysan kind of close that roughly here. Not everything in my life is about views. If it was, I wouldn't be involved in COD, which is kind of interesting because Doug's made this point before that if he actually wanted to capitalize as best as possible, because he understands the content game, he understands the YouTube game, there is a world in which he could, you know, not do COD stuff and do something else and make it work rather well. But yeah, bit of Kaysan versus Doug drama in the chat last night. Lots of talk about that, but I think that it's certainly not over when it comes to what's going on with Boston. And actually, Ronnie, who was watching the show, Intel, says, stop the cap. So, you know, there was some speculation on exactly who's telling the truth on this story right now. I guess we'll see over the coming weeks exactly what develops, because that Boston team that was rumoured may not actually be the Boston team they turn up to the World Cup with, but who made that team? Or if it does get formed, who is going to get the responsibility or the accountability if it ain't very good, as we think that it might potentially not be. But let's talk about, again, this accuracy situation, right? Because a couple of days ago, we saw this floating around, accuracy seemingly in OpTic's team chat. There were questions, was this like, you know, a one-off thing? Was accuracy just popping in for a quick chat with the boys while they're playing scrims, just to do like a one-day consultancy thing before then calling it a day and, you know, stepping away from the team again while Karma and JP take back the reins of the team before? Now, we talked about this in some that saying how, like, I think it's a positive thing that OpTic are at least trying to do this, trying something at the very least to turn their team around, because clearly there were some disagreements, some internal problems with the team during their Major 4 run. They needed, I would say, somebody to switch their heads back into the right place. And if there's anyone that is probably a good guy to look at, it obviously is accuracy, right? Solid player, but I think we've considered for many years now that accuracy as a coach just makes a lot of sense, given his, you know, man management skills, the leadership elements that he has as a player and potentially as a coach as well. And also in the OpTic case, the history that he has with Kenny, winning with him 3 times during the World War II season back in the day, 2018. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then also Pred. Okay, Pred's only been in the league for 2 years. Okay, 3 years now. This is his 3rd year on OpTic, but the best version of Pred that we have ever seen was on Surge when he was with accuracy. So you can argue whether accuracy was, you know, to be deserving all of the accountability and the credit for the good performance of Kenny and Pred when he was alongside them, but it might have had some sort of involvement. So I'll share what Attach has to say on this, and then we'll talk about what we discussed on the show last night.
Thoughts on OpTic's giving up Lamar Brady for coaching? I think it's really good. I think someone like Lamar, I mean, he's just a really smart COD player, and like when he plays, he's already coaching when he's playing. So like, I think he's a great pickup for a coach. Yeah, Lamar's just really smart, breaks down the game really well. He's obviously teamed with Kenny and Pred before, so he's very comfortable with them. Honestly, probably the best Kenny and Pred we've seen has been when they were with Lamar. Kenny was the best player in the game in World War II, and then Pred was one of the best SMGs in the game when they played with Lamar. So I think they trust him a lot too. So
we know that Attach has a long history with accuracy for some time, actually, especially during, if you guys remember, Black Ops 4, I think. They were on the Evil Geniuses team together, and Attach and accuracy, they were always kind of like a bit of a duo. Obviously played on various other teams like Minnesota and stuff like this. Always enjoyed Attach playing with accuracy, even if in the grand scheme of things it didn't always seem like the best decision. Attach would almost always try and play with Lamar just because he valued him so highly as a teammate for loads of different reasons, which is really cool to hear about and to see. And it's true that it's happening still to the present day, that Attach is, you know, giving accuracy a lot of praise, especially given, as he says, the Kenny thing, the Pred thing, when they were arguably at their best. Now, there is an argument to say is it really all that in terms of Kenny being at his best with accuracy? I think for Pred, there is probably a decent argument to say that in terms of playstyle-wise, accuracy was able to get the best out of Pred on that roster. But Kenny, look, he came in World War II, was just incredibly good anyway. He then joined Los Angeles Thieves, without accuracy, and then ended up, winning the World Championship, winning MVPs. So it's not like just you need accuracy to get the best out of Kenny, but, to be fair, there probably is something to be said about the mental side, the competition angle that accuracy knows about with Kenny that maybe isn't so clear in terms of how to, get an actual good team culture, shall we say, that OpTic maybe haven't quite unlocked as of yet. So last night on the show, obviously Ace was giving his thoughts on this, accuracy's cousin, and he didn't want to say too much, but all I'll say is that reading between the lines on what he said, like, this isn't, this is true, as in, this was accuracy in the call. Now, I don't know if this is now a longer term thing, but, as far as I'm aware, like, this is a real deal, that accuracy was there with the guys, and accuracy, or Ace actually was pretty explicit in his perspective that, yeah, like, accuracy makes a lot of sense for these guys to come in, and I believe that's exactly what they've done, and, like, that's my thought process. And I guess just one of my questions is how that's going to work from, like, a coaching perspective, right? Because, JP's more like the analyst, but Karma has been the head coach of the roster. So what is the plan going to be there with Karma and accuracy, right? How are they going to work together in the same way that getting maybe Kenny or Pred on the same page or whatever has been a big talking point of the last couple of, let's say month or so, ever since their struggles during Major 4. It's a similar idea for how the coaching staff is going to work together, especially when it's a change that's been made relatively last minute, with accuracy now coming in to potentially take the reins. I don't know, like, who oversees this team as well? Is Hex the one that makes the call? Because accuracy has never been part of OpTic, right? In his history, Karma has for a long time. So if accuracy comes in and says, look, I want to take the reins here, Karma, like, maybe you can just step down to talking about search and destroy strat, and I want to, like, actually lead the team or something. Like, what's that going to mean, right? And I don't necessarily think that's how it's going to go, but when you make one of these, like, last minute moves, especially when, there's responsibility and there's potential credit to be dished out as a result of how your results go, then it might always cause a little bit of something behind the scenes. But I think really this is a pretty good coaching staff on paper if they're actually working out, but we're not really sure if they are, but in hindsight it might make a lot of sense for accuracy to have not made it to champs, because this might be a great opportunity for him this season and beyond. And genuinely, if this hadn't happened and it was just OpTic as it was, I would have been, seriously concerned about their chances at champs. I genuinely think that with accuracy on board, they do have better chances at champs. I think they'll be better prepared, and we'll see what it does for their search and destroy. That's one of the absolute key things, but I think maybe Karma could just focus on the actual performance side of the play, as in, what do we do in these certain situations? What about the breakoffs and hardpoint? What about the rotations? What about the search and destroy stuff? And then accuracy can focus more on ensuring the guys are actually on the same page, because I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing as it presently stands. So I imagine that they've got accuracy on board. I don't know if he's getting paid or whatever the case is, if he's volunteering or something, just to hop in the chat. But if it's true that he's been on board now for a good few days, and that is continuing over the coming days into the World Championship, is this just like a trial period, or is this going to be actually a long-term move for OpTic? Because next year, I think there is definitely a world in which, we turn up to the start of next season and accuracy is, now the head coach of OpTic, right? Because it's also kind of incredible that accuracy's got this chance. It's not unexpected. I know that Trey mentioned it, though, that there's plenty of players, and even, players that have coached or whatever, like grinders that have gone down in the challenger side, they've become a coach, they've learned their craft, and accuracy, never having coached before, basically just walks into the OpTic job, or at least a trial, right, with the OpTic team. Now, I don't think this should be unexpected. I'm sure that Kenny and maybe Pred were on board with having this discussion as well, and I think that accuracy would arguably be a far better coach, even with not so much experience as a coach, as some of these other guys could potentially be. And as Attach says, accuracy has kind of already been the coach. Like, okay, he's playing, but on some respects, he's always been the coach for the rosters that he's been on over the last several years. But very much interested to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.